Does the modern working environment coexist with school hours even in these so-called flexible times? What happens if your child is to start school and you need to have a chat with the boss about rejigging your hours so you can do the pickup around 3 and your employer isn't happy about it? Ellen Nelson has started a campaign, hashtag work school hours, who believes it's a huge societal issue. Ellen is a former New Zealand Army engineering officer based in Manawatu with her family. Ellen, kia ora, welcome to the panel.
Kia ora, thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure. So you've started this campaign, hashtag work school hours. How did it begin?
Yeah, so I was basically following my PhD research. I ended up, almost by accident, having conversations with just over 500 parents about their experiences of being a working parent. And what I found is that kind of no one was having a good experience. And I realised that the root cause of this issue was the mismatch between work and school. I then researched it a bit further and realised that the work construct of 9 to 5 is incredibly archaic, and it was based on a society that didn't have two working parents in the workforce. And so hashtag work school hours was born as a commercially smart solution.
Yeah. Resonates with us and our whānau, little 4-year-old. We're wondering, how is our work going to have to rejig in October? Tell me, is it a case of making up hours later, in your view?
No, it's not. So in my view, it's really about focusing on how do we increase productivity, and we do that by focusing more on the outputs that we want our staff to deliver, as opposed to focusing so much on the number of hours a person completes.
So it doesn't mean that I've got to make up the hours in the evening, so do the dishes, put little Junior down and get on the tools, say 8 to 9:30, is not that?
It's not, and I'm not saying that you would never ever do work outside of school hours, but it's really about saying, okay, Wallace, what are the tasks that you actually need to get achieved for your day, and you do them. And if you get those done by 3 o'clock, which, believe me, when people are motivated by an early knockoff, they get their stuff done quicker, then hopefully you won't need to do anything later in the evening. But it's certainly not about counting your hours.
Let's go to Sue Kishi on this one first. I mean, Sue, this is so funny. This has been brought up in the office quite a lot. The fact that the modern workplace is not now compatible with modern school hours.
Look, I couldn't agree more. I love your campaign, Ellen. And you're right, it's a huge social issue. And it is incredible that there's been so little change to our working hours or working arrangements to make them more parent-friendly. And you'd think that now, with such an acute shortage of workers, this was the very time to introduce it. I have just one concern, which is that years ago in America, someone came up with this idea of a mommy track. So the idea was there'd be one track for women who worked part-time and a fast track for the men who were working full-time. And of course, at the time people were sort of scandalised by it. But effectively, that's what's happened. The women, and it's all usually women who opt to work part-time, find that they're penalised long-term in their promotion and, going forward. So how do we normalise this to the point where you're not going to be penalised long-term in your career if you do the 9 to 3 working hours?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can't stand that, because you're right, that's exactly what's happening. It's often the women or the mums that are taking reduced hours that usually comes with a reduced pay,
Right.
usually a reduced workload, but of course they get penalised in terms of lack of promotion. So I'm trying to push work school hours not just as this lovely thing for mums or even just for parents, but for everyone. So we actually normalise that that's the way that we do work, that we normalise the idea that adults and children would have a better aligned schedule. And therefore, you're not having this, mum trap where people who work part-time are penalised. It's just that we're all working those reduced hours.
Okay, Liam. What about, shall we bring Liam also, because he has a young family at home, Liam?
Yeah, I've got 4 children, and my wife and I have 4 children, I should say, and we're in quite a fortunate position in that we're able to survive on one income, and that's something that my wife wants to do. So she's chosen to be a stay-at-home mum for a while. But certainly in our workplace, reality is that two things. First of all, if you can't be flexible, then you're going to miss out on a whole lot of great people, right? And so, some of the best people that you have working for you are working mums. And to the point that was raised earlier, they're also the most productive people because they get so much done in that time. They work to deadlines like anything. They're some of the hardest, most efficient workers that there are. And so I think that the approach of focusing on output and productivity is the right one. It is a real problem. It's got a lot of different aspects to it as a problem. And one of those aspects too, I think we really have to address is that as a consumerist society, customers and consumers also have to be on board, right? So the idea that you'll be able to reach anybody who's providing professional services to you anytime and without an appointment or without having to schedule in advance, that's got to go as part of it. So it's in our economic, our social, our moral best interest to make this work, but we've all got our part to play in it.
Quite a bit of response on this, Alan. I had my daughter 1 week out of 2 in the effort to get my supposedly flexible employer to allow me to work a school-friendly week, and a long week was ridiculous. I have found the hours are indeed meaningless when it comes to outputs too. Another one here, this is a win-win idea, works for everyone. Mum and dad, please. I mean, this affects so many people. Tens of thousands of people listening this afternoon will be affected by this issue. Ellen.
Absolutely, and this is the thing that kind of stuns me is so 80% of the population roughly become parents. This is a pretty big contribution to the workforce. And I mean, I've researched 500 people, but it's growing. I have not yet met a single parent who said, "Oh, this is a terrible idea." Like, every single parent is saying, "Yeah, we're struggling. How can we make it better?" And I'm absolutely convinced that hashtag work school hours is a solution that is good for the staff, which that's the bit that I'm passionate about, but actually it's commercially viable, and that's the bit that I know is needed for the rubber to hit the road.
It's wonderful to have you on, Ellen. Kia ora, and look forward to see where your campaign goes, if it actually strikes a chord in wider society.
Thank you very much. I'm determined to make that happen. So thanks for the opportunity.
That's Ellen Nelson there, who started the hashtag work school hours. Your lot of thoughts on this. Meanwhile, how do you take your lunch to work?